Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and I am here to give you a very brief recap of the song and score nominees that I haven't talked about as part of my overall Oscars death race. If you want to hear me talk a little bit more on what the death race is, what the overall ambition and goal is of doing this project, you can check out the last video on the top right corner where I covered all the above the line categories. Now we're going a little bit of below the line, and we're starting with the original score and original song categories. I'm not going to talk about any of the films that we've already talked about. So it's kind of be like we've already checked off half the list. In this case, we've already checked off 7 of the 10 nominations. There's only 3 films to talk about today that are brand new to this death race that we're going to cross off the list today. The first one being Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which I've already done a full review for. So again, I don't really even need to go too in depth on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I thought it was okay. At the time, I liked it. As time has gone on, I think I've come to be a little bit more mixed on it than liking it, just because there are more glaring flaws that I think about as I think and mull it over in my head. Again, the visual effects aren't great. I think it's just poorly executed, and especially side by side with the Spielberg 4. Yes, all 4. I like all 4 of those. I think it definitely pales in comparison, though I do think because of Harrison Ford's general natural ability of just performance in general, but in the role itself, and of course the John Williams score, I think it ultimately is effective enough in what it's trying to do. It's just not the best version of what it could be. And I bring up John Williams because that is the one nomination here that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny picked up on Oscar nomination morning. It's not going to win the Oscar. It would be very shocking if it did. And I know there's been a little bit of talk about whether John Williams is retiring, if this is his last score, if he's saying this is his last score, if he's saying this is not his last score. I feel like it's very wishy-washy. It always goes back and forth. It's like a tennis match. And maybe that's why they wanted to nominate him, because, hey, you have an open slot, you nominate John Williams. But this year in particular, there were some really, really great scores. So do I really think Indiana Jones should have been in that collective few? Probably not. But am I mad about it? It's John Williams. No, I'm not going to be mad about it because everything he does is gold. This is just probably the most like Fool's Gold of the 5 he's done. But again, when you're 5 in, the fifth one might not be able to capture the greatness of the first one. You start to reuse stuff so often that what's new isn't as great as the stuff that was new the first time. Though, because you're recycling great stuff from the first film, the score still pops, and that score still pops in that movie. So I'm very mixed on the score of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, especially the nomination. I'm a little less mixed on. I'm very much not head over heels about this nomination, but again, it's cool because it just adds more films to talk about when talking about the Oscars, which is interesting. We're not just getting 5 Best Picture films in this category; we're getting 4 Best Picture films and Indiana Jones. So there's Indiana Jones. Now for 2 films that I haven't brought up at all on this channel. The first being Flamin' Hot, which is the obligatory Diane Warren nomination. Every year there's a song that Diane Warren just gets into the 5. At this point, it's inevitable. Every year, I guess it's the way she campaigns things. I mean, I'm not a critic who gets screeners, which, by the way, Netflix, if you want to send me screeners, I'd love it. But I think it's one of those things. I guess this wasn't Netflix, this was Hulu, but whatever. I think it's one of those things where she must just campaign the crap out of her songs, because I'll be honest, and we'll talk about Flamin' Hot the film in a sec because I haven't really reviewed it on this channel, but the song itself is not memorable. It's not that well written, and like, it's catchy in the moment when you're listening to it, but by the time they play the next song in the credits, you don't remember it. And I think that's one thing with song nominees that's always tough, is like there's so many songs that are diegetic versus non-diegetic. Like I'm Just Ken from Barbie is something you see in the film. It's a moment that sticks with you more than it's just a song. Same with What Was I Made For from Barbie, whereas a song like The Fire Inside is after the credits have like started rolling, some people would have already turned off their TVs by that point. And now I'm a proponent of staying through the credits. I think it's disrespectful for people who do turn off the credits, or who fly out of the theater when the credits are rolling, or who don't at least kind of linger in the theater to like soak it all in. But I think there's something to be said about the fact that this is a credit song, because there are a lot of montages in this film. They could have easily made this song be a part of a montage in the film, but instead they save it for the credits, which I think, you know, Diane Warren gets nominated every year, so I think she's okay if I don't like one of her songs, because I've liked a lot of her other songs. As for the film itself, though, Flamin' Hot surprised me. I don't think it's amazing, but I do think, we've been getting such a slew of these films: Air, Blackberry, Barbie, Wonka, these very big product films, The Beanie Bubble, these films that are very much about a very specific phenomenon of a very specific generation or era, the Barbie toys or the Air Jordan Nikes, like all these things that are very culturally important. And then you look at Flamin' Hot, and I think, because Flamin' Hot Cheetos, they're very cool. People like them, but it's not one of those brands that it's like, oh my God, they're making a movie about the creation of Flamin' Hot. I don't think anyone would have heard that premise and been excited for it, but I think that works for the film's favor because the expectations aren't that high, because the stakes are a little lower, so that the film can actually spend its time caring about the characters and showcasing the characters rather than diving into the ins and outs of the business and trying to sell the product. Because ultimately, all these films, while they are films in and of themselves, they still have to kind of sell their product. And sometimes it becomes a little overbearing in the case of maybe Air or Barbie, or the other films that I mentioned. But I think for this case with Flamin' Hot, it is not concerned about selling the brand of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. In fact, they take very big historic liberties, but I think that works in the benefit of the storytelling. Now, the thing I think that is a detractor, as much as it's great for the representation of the culture on display, the fact that it's more character focused and plot focused, I think the problem with it is that the actual writing is very hammy. It's very melodramatic. Every single other scene is like one of those, like, Remember the Titans, like, locker room speeches, essentially, where a character is like, this is what you're going to do because you're going to go out and you're going to get and you're going to do it, which is great. It's a great inspirational film if you're looking for a film like that. But if you're not expecting that, it can be a little bit, heavy handed at times. But I did like it. I was very surprised by Flamin' Hot. The song, The Fire Inside, not very good. It's nominated for Best Original Song. I don't like the song, but the movie itself is better than I thought it would be. And next, we're going to be talking about American Symphony, which I was surprised didn't make it into the Best Documentary category. It's only here for Best Song. But John Batiste, I'm a fan of his work, and I was a fan of seeing his creative process on display in this film because it's a very innovative one. It's a very unique one. But what I like so much about this film that was different than what I've been used to seeing is the fact that it was so focused on his relationship with his wife, specifically his wife going through a terminal illness. Well, not a terminal illness. She is still alive, thankfully, but cancer, which can end up being a terminal illness for so many people, and seeing how she battles it and how she fights against this horrible, horrible disease. And you start to see how their love for one another grows and how the toll it takes on someone when they are working and they need to be thriving to bring the bread home for the relationship, but also, that constant struggle of like, should I be out doing what I'm doing, even though I love it and it's a great creative outlet and she wants me to do it, but knowing that she's back home fighting this thing. It's a very interesting character piece, more than it is a musical biography or a documentary, which I thought was very refreshing and very exciting. It reminded me a lot of Maestro in the fact that it's much more about this relationship than it is about a career. And I think that's why a lot of people have grown to like it so much. Now, the presentation itself, I think for a person like John Batiste, it could have been a little bit more spectacular, a little bit more fantastical, maybe a little bit more hip and trendy. Just it needed some sort of spark that I don't think it had, but it was still very well shot. I mean, it was a Netflix documentary. I believe it was funded by the Obamas, so it's really nice to look at. But I was expecting something a little bit more larger than life to match the heights of John Batiste. But then again, the film is all about this kind of more subdued storyline of this or their relationship, the stuff behind the scenes that maybe they didn't want a big flashy documentary. And honestly, I respect them for that as well. And as for the song, I think the song is great. I mean, I like John Batiste. It's not a song that I'm walking away being like, that needs to win the Oscar, but I like it just the same. So now we can check those three off the list: Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, American Symphony, and Flamin' Hot. Boom, there they are in green. They are checked off the list. We are one step further to completing our death race. And before we go, I want to rank these categories: Best Original Song and Best Original Score. Starting with Original Score, my number one score of the year is Oppenheimer. I love it. If you watch the Pickle Awards this weekend, you know how much I love Oppenheimer and how much the audience agrees. And number two, Poor Things. I think that score is just so zany and quirky and fun. Three, Killers of the Flower Moon. Rest in peace, Robbie Robertson. Really great, subdued, quiet score. Number four, I really like American Fiction score. It's jazzy, it's upbeat, it's funky, it's fun. It's just not one of my favorites of the year, but I still really like it. And then five is Indiana Jones. Even though I really respect John Williams and he's the GOAT, I can't put that any higher than the four above it. As for original song, my number one and two are the two songs from Barbie. I'm going to go with What Was I Made For number one, just because I think it has kind of a bigger ethos about the film in general. And I feel like it kind of accompanies this film and the emotional resonance you take from the ending of the movie, more so than the other film does, which is I'm Just Ken. Even though I'm Just Ken does also serve a purpose, I think What Was I Made For serves an even more important purpose, that, I'm Just Ken is more of a fun moment in the film, even though it's a great song. And then at number three, I'm going to put the John Batiste song, It Never Went Away, from American Symphony. I really like that song. At four, I'll put Wajaje, a song for my people, Killers of the Flower Moon. It's not a song I want to like listen to on repeat in my car, but I think in the context of the film, it really works. It's a very powerful song. It shows the culture, which is so important in humanizing the characters that this film requires the audience to empathize with the most. And then number 5, I'll put The Fire Inside because I think it's a flaming hot piece of garbage song in a movie that surprised me that I did like. So that is my recap for the song categories and the 3 films that we're checking off the list. It was a short one because there were only 3 films to talk about, but next I will be diving into the animated category of animated feature, and I'm going to be doing the animated shorts as well as a companion. So you're going to get 10 movies to cross off that list in the very next video. So stay tuned for that animated video, and I will see you then.